The massive crystal dome of Nexus Prime stretched high above the assembly hall. Inside, creatures from 847 different worlds sat in their assigned seats. Some had fur, others had scales, and a few were just floating clouds of gas in special containers. The air buzzed with translator devices working hard to turn alien sounds into words everyone could understand. Ambassador Deho walked slowly down the center aisle. His black suit looked simple compared to the colorful robes and metal armor around him. Behind him walked 3 other humans. Commander Yuna wore her navy blue uniform with small silver stars on her shoulders. Science Officer Timon carried a small bag of human items to show the council. Communications Specialist Jiwoo held a recording device that looked like a simple tablet. The humans stopped at a small platform in the center of the hall. All around them, hundreds of alien eyes stared down. Some eyes were big and round, others were thin slits, and a few glowed different colors. The sound of breathing, clicking, and strange humming filled the air. High above on the main platform sat the council leaders. Overlord Kethvak of the Vorthons looked like a giant lizard wearing golden armor. His red eyes never blinked as he watched the humans. Next to him, Queen Silandra of the Zentari had a bug-like head with too many arms. Her voice came from speakers because her real voice would hurt human ears. "So these are the new ones," Kethvak said. His voice was deep and cold. "The humans from the small blue world." Deho bowed slightly. "Thank you for allowing us to speak before the council. We come in peace hoping to join the galactic community." Some of the aliens made sounds that the translators turned into laughter. A creature that looked like a walking tree with eyes shook its branches. Another alien that was mostly tentacles wiggled in what seemed like amusement. "Peace," said General Morgan of the Draxons. He was covered in thick gray skin and had 4 arms, each holding a different weapon. "Your species still fights wars on your own world. You call that peace?" "We are working to fix our problems," Yuna said, stepping forward. "Every species has growing pains." More laughter came from the crowd. Representative Veltash of the Karathi stood up. His people looked like tall, thin humans, but with silver skin and no hair. "Growing pains? Your species achieved faster than light travel only 50 years ago. We have been traveling between stars for over 10,000 years. "That is true," Deho agreed. "We are young compared to your great civilizations. That is why we wish to learn from you." Taman opened his bag and pulled out several items. He held up a small painting of Earth's sunrise. "We bring gifts from our world, art that shows how we see beauty." The aliens looked at the painting with little interest. Queen Zilandra's mechanical voice spoke. "Your art shows emotion. Emotion makes species weak. It clouds judgment and leads to poor decisions." "We also bring music," Jiwoo said. She pressed a button on her device and soft piano music filled the hall. The melody was sad but beautiful, telling a story without words. Several aliens covered their ears or whatever they used for hearing. "Turn it off," demanded Veltash. "That noise is disturbing." Jiwoo stopped the music. The humans looked calm, but inside they felt the sting of rejection. Everything they thought was beautiful the aliens saw as worthless or annoying. Deho tried again. "We also offer our scientific knowledge. We have made discoveries about genetics and medicine that might help other species." "Your science is basic," said Chief Scientist Zorthak of the Melody. His people were blue and very smart, with large heads full of big brains. "We studied your transmissions. Your technology is thousands of years behind ours." "We understand," Yuna said, "but we learn fast. We hope that through trade and friendship we can grow together." The council members looked at each other. Some whispered in their strange languages. Others just stared at the humans like they were looking at insects. Finally, Kethvak spoke. "The council has decided. Humans will be given probationary status. You may trade with member worlds, but only basic goods. You cannot vote on council matters. You cannot access advanced technology. You will be watched to see if you are worthy of full membership." The words stung, but Deho nodded. "We accept your decision and thank you for this opportunity." As the humans prepared to leave, Yuna quietly pressed a button on her uniform. Hidden sensors throughout her clothing had been recording everything. Not just what was said, but energy readings, technology signatures, and even the emotional states of different species through microfacial analysis. Tae-min had also been busy. While showing his simple gifts, his bag had been scanning every piece of technology in the room. The aliens thought humans were too primitive to have such advanced scanning tools, so they never bothered to check. Jiwoo's tablet was much more than a recording device. It had been mapping the station's layout, security systems, and communication networks. Her friendly smile had hidden the fact that she was a trained intelligence officer who had just gathered enough information to write a complete report on galactic defenses. Walking back through the station's hallways, the humans passed shops and meeting rooms where aliens did business. They saw the casual way the different species treated each other, some with respect, others with obvious dislike. They noticed which species seemed happy and which ones looked afraid. Outside the station, the human ship Soul's Hope waited. It was small and simple compared to the massive alien vessels docked nearby. The aliens who saw it probably thought it was barely capable of space travel. Once inside their ship, the humans' behavior changed completely. Yuna pulled out her real equipment and started analyzing the data they had collected. Their shield technology has 3 major weak points, she reported to Daeho, and their sensors can't detect our stealth coding. Taemin was already working on his computer. I've identified the power sources for at least 12 different species. If we needed to, we could build weapons specifically designed to overload their systems. Jiwoo looked up from her detailed scans of the station. They have no real security against infiltration. They're so confident in their superiority that they don't expect anyone to try spying on them. Daeho sat in his captain's chair and looked out at the stars. Did you notice how they treated each other? Yes, Yuna said. The Vorthons and Zentari clearly control everything. At least 15 species looked like they were forced to be here. The Valdari representative looked especially unhappy, and, did you see how they reacted to our music? Jiwoo added. Several species seemed to like it but hid their reactions. They're not allowed to show appreciation for anything the council leaders disapprove of. The ship began moving away from Nexus Prime. As Earth grew larger on their screen, Daeho made a decision that would change everything. Start preparing the full report, he told his team. Include everything we learned about their technology, politics, and weaknesses. When we get home, we need to tell our leaders that this council is not what it pretends to be. Should we recommend accepting their probationary status? Taemin asked. Daeho was quiet for a long moment. We'll accept it, but we'll also prepare for the day when acceptance isn't enough. The human ship disappeared into hyperspace, carrying information that would soon reshape humanity's future. The Galactic Council thought they had just dismissed another primitive species. They had no idea they had just made their first serious mistake. Lieutenant Minho was drinking his 3rd cup of coffee when the alarm started screaming. The quiet night shift at Luna Station became chaos in seconds. Red lights flashed across every screen in the monitoring room. The numbers he was seeing made no sense at first. This can't be right, he said to himself, checking the readings again. 50 massive ships had just appeared at the edge of the solar system. The energy signatures were bigger than anything in human records. Minho's fingers flew across his keyboard, sending emergency signals to every human base and ship in the system. This is Luna Station to all forces. We have hostile contact. Repeat, we have hostile contact. Admiral So-Young was in her office on Mars base when the message came through. She had been expecting this day for 6 months, ever since Daeho's team returned from Nexus Prime with their warning. She pressed a red button on her desk that she had hoped never to use. All stations, this is Admiral So-Young. Protocol 7 is now active. I repeat, Protocol 7 is active. Across the solar system, things that looked like asteroids and empty space began to change. Hidden doors opened on what seemed like normal rocks. Gun barrels emerged from fake mining stations. Ships that had been hiding behind planets powered up their engines. The Galactic Council's pacification fleet came out of hyperspace expecting to find a few primitive human ships guarding a helpless world. Instead, Warlord Krasmor of the Draxans found himself looking at a fortress that stretched across the entire solar system. "What is this?" Krasmor growled to his officers. His ship, the Bone Crusher, was supposed to be the most feared vessel in the galaxy, but now he was staring at weapon platforms that appeared out of nowhere. "Sir, our scans show at least 200 defensive positions," reported his tactical officer. "They were completely hidden until now." Captain Hyun-woo commanded the human flagship Incheon's Pride. Unlike the massive alien ships, his vessel was built for speed and survival rather than intimidation. He opened a channel to his sister, Commander Yoon-ji, who led the fighter squadron called Dokdo Wing. "Remember the training," he told her. "Hit fast, hit hard, and don't let them surround you." "Understood, brother," Yoon-ji replied from her fighter cockpit. "Let's show them what humans can do." The first shots came from the Council fleet. Massive energy beams that could destroy mountains struck the human defenses. But instead of seeing explosions, the aliens watched in shock as the beams bounced off protective shields and reflected back into space. Chief Engineer Sang-woo monitored the battle from Defense Station Sejong. His team had spent years building these shields using technology they had secretly copied and improved from their visits to Council worlds. "Shields holding at 90%, he reported to Admiral So-young. "The Draxan weapons are exactly as predicted." Dr. Hai-jin watched from her laboratory hidden inside an asteroid. She was the head of human military research, and this battle was the test of everything her team had built. While the Council thought humans were primitive, she had been reverse engineering their technology and finding ways to beat it. "Deploy the kinetic weapons," she ordered her assistants. The aliens were used to energy weapons and particle beams. They had shields designed to stop those kinds of attacks. What they didn't expect was simple metal rods fired at incredible speed. The kinetic bombardment weapons punched through Council shields like they weren't even there. The Bone Crusher shook as 3 metal rods tore through its armor. Krasmor roared in anger and pain as his perfect ship was damaged by what looked like primitive bullets. "How are they doing this?" he demanded. "Their technology is supposed to be inferior." His science officer was studying the human weapons with growing alarm. "Sir, these are our own designs but modified. They've taken our technology and made it better." The battle raged for hours. The Council had more ships and bigger weapons, but the humans fought with the intelligence that surprised their enemies. Every human ship seemed to know exactly where to hit to cause the most damage. Every defensive position was placed perfectly to create crossfire zones. Commander Yoon-ji led her fighters in attack runs that defied physics. Her pilots flew their small ships into the middle of the alien fleet, striking at weak points and vanishing before the big guns could target them. "How do they know our weak spots?" asked a Karathi ship captain as human fighters destroyed his engine core with surgical precision. The answer was simple, though the aliens didn't know it yet. For 6 months, human intelligence officers had been studying every piece of information Daeho's team had gathered. They knew exactly how Council ships were built and where to hit them. But despite their clever tactics and hidden preparations, the humans were outnumbered 10-1. As the battle entered its second day, the Council's superior numbers began to show. Human defensive stations went silent one by one. Ships that had fought bravely were reduced to floating wreckage. Admiral So-young watched the tactical display with a heavy heart. They had hurt the enemy badly, but it wasn't enough. She opened a channel to all human forces. "All ships, this is Admiral So-young. Begin dispersal protocol immediately." Captain Hyun-woo knew what that meant. He looked around the bridge of the Incheon's Pride at his brave crew. "You heard the Admiral, time to go." The remaining human ships broke away from the battle and scattered in different directions. Some headed toward the outer planets, others accelerated toward jump points that would take them to distant stars. The aliens tried to follow, but the human ships seemed to vanish into space itself. Commander Yoon-ji was among the last to leave, covering the retreat of the bigger ships. As her fighter accelerated away from Earth, she looked back at the blue world where she had been born. Alien ships were already moving toward the planet. "This isn't over," she promised herself. "We'll be back." On Earth, evacuation ships that had been hidden underground for months finally launched. The planet's civilian population had been secretly moved to hidden colonies that the Council didn't know existed. When the aliens finally reached Earth, they found mostly empty cities and abandoned military bases. Krasmore stood on the bridge of his damaged flagship, looking down at the blue world he had conquered. Around him, the wreckage of both fleets drifted in space. He had won, but it had cost him more ships than any previous Council operation. "Sir, should we pursue the fleeing humans?" his tactical officer asked. Krasmore considered the question. His fleet was hurt badly, and he had no idea where the human ships had gone. "No, we have taken their homeworld. That should be enough to break their spirit." But even as he said those words, Krasmore felt uneasy. The humans had fought with a skill and preparation that suggested they had been planning for this war long before it started. They had known things about Council technology that should have been impossible for a primitive species to learn. Deep in space, the scattered human fleet regrouped at secret meeting points. Ships that had seemed destroyed were actually hiding, using advanced stealth technology copied from Council designs. The humans had lost Earth, but their real strength had always been their ability to adapt and survive. Admiral So Young's ship, the Taejong's Wisdom, met with dozens of other vessels at a hidden base built inside a rogue planet. As she looked at the surviving fleet, she felt not defeat, but determination. "The Council thinks they've won," she told her officers. "They think taking Earth means they've broken us. They're about to learn that Earth was never our real strength." She activated a holographic display showing star charts that covered half the galaxy. Red dots marked human bases and colonies that the Council had never discovered. Blue lines showed supply routes and communication networks that had been built in secret over decades. "Phase 1 is complete," Admiral So Young announced. "Now we begin Phase 2. The Council wanted a war. Let's give them one they'll never forget." The humans had lost their homeworld, but they had gained something more valuable: the element of surprise. The aliens still thought they were fighting a primitive species that had gotten lucky. They had no idea that humanity's real war was just beginning. In the depths of space, human ships began moving toward targets that the Galactic Council didn't even know were threatened. The scattered storm was gathering strength, and soon it would strike back with a fury that would shake the galaxy itself. Captain Dongmin's ship was invisible. The Gwangju's ghost drifted through space like a shadow, its special coating making it impossible for alien sensors to detect. Inside the small vessel, Dongmin and intelligence officer Yu Jin watched a Council supply convoy pass just a few kilometers away. 12 cargo ships, Yu Jin whispered, though there was no one to hear them in the vacuum of space. All carrying food and medical supplies to the Korathi homeworld. "Perfect," Dongmin replied. "Are our people in position?" Yu Jin checked her. Computer screen. Small dots showed the locations of other invisible human ships scattered throughout this sector of space. "All teams ready, Captain." The attack began without warning. What looked like empty space suddenly filled with explosions, as human ships decloaked and struck the convoy. But instead of destroying the cargo ships, they used special weapons that only disabled the engines and communication systems. Within minutes, the entire convoy was helpless. Human boarding teams moved from ship to ship, taking the supplies but leaving the alien crews unharmed. They also left behind small devices that would make it look like the convoy had been attacked by pirates from the Melody system. "Clean work," Dongmin said, as his ship prepared to vanish again. "The Council will spend weeks trying to figure out who really hit them." This scene was being repeated all across Council space. Human ships that weren't supposed to exist were striking targets that weren't supposed to be vulnerable. But the humans had been preparing for this war much longer than anyone realized. General Jun Seok commanded the human war effort from his mobile base aboard the Taejong's Wisdom. The converted research vessel looked harmless from the outside, but inside it was packed with the most advanced computers and communication equipment humanity had ever built. "Report from Sector 7, announced Dr. Na Young, his chief of xenobiology. "The Draxon fuel depot at Gamma Station went offline 6 hours ago. They think it was a computer malfunction." Jun Seok smiled. "And Sector 12? The Zentari Queen ship Hive Mother lost communication with 17 colonies. They're blaming solar interference. What the aliens didn't know was that these weren't accidents or random attacks. Commander Wu Jin led special operations teams that had been studying Council infrastructure for months. They knew exactly which targets to hit to cause maximum confusion, with minimum violence. "Sir," reported Communications Officer Heiwan, "we're getting confirmations from our undercover agents. Operation Mirror is working perfectly." Dr. Suman looked up from her psychological warfare station. Before the war, she had been a cultural anthropologist studying alien societies. Now she was using that knowledge to turn the Council's member species against each other. "The Vorthons are already suspicious that the Zentari are planning a rebellion," she reported. "I've been sending fake intelligence reports to both sides. They're so busy watching each other that they're not paying attention to us." The beautiful part of Operation Mirror was that it used the aliens' own prejudices against them. The Council had always been held together by fear and mutual distrust. The humans were simply making those existing problems worse. On the Karathi homeworld, Representative Veltash was reading a report that made his silver skin turn pale with worry. "According to this intelligence, the Draxons are planning to attack our trade routes," he told his advisors. The report was fake, created by human psychological warfare specialists who understood how paranoid the Karathi were about their neighbors. But it looked real because it was based on actual Draxon military plans that human spies had stolen years ago. Meanwhile, on the Draxon war world of Krax Prime, General Morgan was reading a similar report about Karathi plans to sabotage Draxon weapons factories. His 4 hands clenched into fists as he studied the evidence. "Call the fleet commanders," he ordered. "If the Karathi want to fight, we'll give them one." Neither species realized they were being manipulated by humans who had spent years learning their languages, cultures, and fears. While they prepared to fight each other, human ships moved freely through space that should have been heavily guarded. The turning point came when Captain Kyung-ho made the discovery that changed everything. His science vessel, Newton's Dream, had been following a Zentari hive ship for 3 days, carefully scanning its communication systems. "I don't believe it," said cyber warfare expert Haiwan, staring at her computer screen. "The Queens aren't telepathically linked at all. It's all just quantum communication networks." Kyung-ho studied the data. "You mean their entire hive mind is just advanced technology?" "Exactly. And technology can be hacked." Within hours, every human cyber warfare specialist in the galaxy was working on the same project. The Zentari had built their entire civilization around the idea that their queens could communicate instantly across any distance through mental powers. In reality, they were using quantum communication devices that were incredibly advanced but still vulnerable to the right kind of attack. The assault on the Zentari communication network began at exactly midnight, Galactic Standard Time. Human hackers who had infiltrated dozens of alien computer systems launched coordinated strikes against quantum communication hubs throughout Zentari space. For the first time in their species' history, the Zentari queens found themselves alone. Queen Silandra, sitting in her throne room on Nexus Prime, suddenly couldn't hear the voices of her sister queens. The constant mental chatter that had filled her mind since birth was replaced by terrifying silence. "What is happening?" she demanded of her technicians. "Restore the network immediately." But the humans had done more than just jam the communications. They had infected the quantum networks with viruses that would take months to remove. Every time the Zentari tried to restore one connection, 3 others would fail. Across Zentari, space panic spread as individual queens made decisions without consulting the hive mind. Some queens ordered their fleets to attack neighboring systems. Others recalled all their ships to defend their homeworlds. The perfect coordination that had made the Zentari so powerful crumbled in a matter of hours. Admiral Chan Wu watched the chaos from his command ship, the massive carrier Sejong's Hammer. His vessel was hidden in a nebula at the edge of Council space, coordinating human operations across half the galaxy. "The Zentari are in complete disarray," reported his intelligence officer. 3 different queens have declared themselves the new supreme leader. And the other Council species? The Draxons and Karathi are mobilizing against each other. The Vorthons are trying to restore order, but they don't have enough ships to cover all the trouble spots. Chanwu nodded with satisfaction. This was the moment they had been planning for since the fall of Earth. Signal all human fleets. Begin Phase 3. Across the galaxy, hidden human bases received the order they had been waiting for. Ships that had been built in secret asteroid shipyards powered up their engines. Weapons that had been designed specifically to fight Council technology charged their systems. The galaxy was about to learn that Earth had never been humanity's real homeworld. For decades, while the Council believed humans were a primitive species barely capable of space travel, they had been building an entire parallel civilization in the dark spaces between the stars. The scattered storm was gathering into a hurricane, and the eye of that storm was aimed directly at the heart of the Galactic Council's power. The aliens who had dismissed humanity as insignificant were about to face an enemy that had been studying their weaknesses for years and preparing for this exact moment. In the darkness of space, human ships began moving toward targets that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. The hunter was about to become the hunted, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The real war was just beginning. Grand Admiral Ji-hoon stood in the command center of the turtle ship, looking at a holographic display that showed the entire galaxy. Red dots marked Council strongholds that were under attack. Blue arrows showed human fleet movements that shouldn't have been possible. The aliens still didn't understand what they were facing. Status report, he ordered Colonel So-jin, his chief of staff. 17 major Council installations have gone dark in the past week, So-jin replied, her fingers dancing across her computer keyboard. Supply lines are breaking down across 3 sectors. The Karathi and Draxans are shooting at each other, instead of looking for us. Ji-hoon smiled grimly. The turtle ship was humanity's greatest achievement, a mobile fortress that could disguise itself as an asteroid while coordinating human forces across thousands of light years. The Council had no idea it existed. Engineer Tae-won looked up from his workstation where he was modifying captured Council weapons. Sir, the plasma rifles we took from that Draxan patrol last week, I figured out how to reverse their polarity. Now they'll overload any Draxan ship's shields. And the Zentari stun weapons? Ji-hoon asked. Even better. Dr. Yan-su found a way to turn them into signal amplifiers. We can use them to break through their quantum communication encryption. This was what made humans so dangerous. Other species built weapons and used them the same way for thousands of years. Humans took those same weapons and turned them into something completely different within days. Dr. Yan-su led a team of engineers who could reverse engineer alien technology faster than the aliens themselves could develop countermeasures. While the Council spent months in committee meetings discussing new defensive strategies, humans were already building weapons to defeat those defenses. But the real war wasn't being fought with ships and weapons. It was being fought with information and fear. Ambassador In-young had once been dismissed as a minor diplomat at the Council meetings. Now she was revealing the true extent of humanity's intelligence network. From her hidden base on a rogue planet, she coordinated spy operations that reached into the highest levels of Council government. Agent reports from Nexus Prime, she announced during the daily briefing. Overlord Kethvak has increased his personal security by 300%. He's not leaving his quarters anymore. And Queen Zilandra? Ji-hoon asked. Completely. Paranoid. She's convinced that half the Council members are working with us. She's actually right about 3 of them, but she doesn't know which 3. The psychological warfare was devastating. Council leaders who had once felt untouchable now lived in constant fear. They knew humans were somewhere out there, planning and watching, but they couldn't figure out where or how many. Major Seung-ho led the most feared unit in human space, the Ghost Battalion. These were soldiers who specialized in infiltration and assassination, trained to think like aliens and move through alien societies without being detected. Target eliminated, he reported from a secure communication channel. Council member, Zarthok of the Melody will not be attending any more meetings. The brilliant scientist had been killed in what looked like an accident in his own laboratory. Security recordings showed nothing unusual, just a simple equipment malfunction that released toxic gas. What they didn't show was Shung Ho slipping in and out of the facility like smoke. Stealth specialist Ye Jin had accomplished something even more impressive. She had infiltrated Nexus Prime itself, the most heavily guarded location in the galaxy. Now she was living in the ventilation systems, planting evidence and recording conversations. "The council is falling apart," she reported from her hiding place above the main meeting hall. Kethvak accused 3 different species of treason today. "They're so busy fighting each other that they've forgotten about finding us." Dr. Sung Min analyzed the intelligence reports from her xenopsychology center. She had spent years studying how alien minds worked, and now she was using that knowledge to predict their behavior. "The irony is perfect," she explained to Ji-hoon during one of their strategy meetings. "Their arrogance made them the perfect targets for intelligence gathering. Every time they dismissed us as primitive, they revealed more about their own weaknesses." The humans had been taking notes during every interaction with council species. Every slight, every moment of condescension, every casual revelation about their technology or politics had been carefully recorded and analyzed. Captain Young-soo was putting that intelligence to use in the most dramatic way possible. His liberation fleet had just freed the Valdari homeworld, a species that had been enslaved by the Council for over 3 centuries. "The Valdari are excellent fighters when they're free to choose their own battles," Young-soo reported as his ships escorted former slaves to safety. "They know Council tactics better than anyone because they've been forced to serve on Council ships for generations." The liberation of the Valdari was more than just a humanitarian mission. It was a signal to every oppressed species in Council space that the humans were offering something the Council never had: freedom. Within weeks, rebellion was spreading through Council territory. Species that had been forced into submission for centuries suddenly found weapons and ships appearing in their systems. Human operatives, working through carefully built networks of sympathizers, were arming anyone willing to fight for independence. The Council's response was predictably brutal. Overlord Kethvak ordered the destruction of 3 rebel worlds as an example to others. But this only made more species join the growing rebellion. Engineer Tae Wan had been analyzing captured Council military equipment for months, and his findings were disturbing. "Their weapons are designed for intimidation, not efficiency," he reported. "They rely on fear and overwhelming force because they've never faced an enemy that could adapt." Dr. Yan-soo agreed. "Their technology hasn't really advanced in centuries. They've been so focused on controlling other species that they stopped innovating." This was humanity's greatest advantage. While the Council had grown lazy and comfortable, humans had been forced to innovate constantly just to survive. Every challenge had made them stronger and more creative. The war reached a turning point when human forces struck at the Karathi trade hub of Velthara Station. Instead of destroying it, they captured it intact and broadcast a message to the entire galaxy. Ambassador In-young appeared on every communication screen in Council space. Behind her stood representatives of a dozen liberated species, all united under the human banner. "People of the galaxy," she began, "you have been told that the Council protects you. You have been told that you need their guidance and control. Today we offer you a choice." The message was simple but revolutionary. Humans weren't trying to conquer the galaxy, they were offering to free it. "Join us," In-young continued, "and we will help you build a galaxy where all species are equal, where no one rules through fear or force, where every world can choose its own destiny." The response was overwhelming. Across Council space, species that had never dared to rebel began rising up. The humans had done more than just start a war. They had started a revolution. Grand Admiral Ji-hoon watched the tactical display as more and more systems declared independence from the Council. Red dots representing Council control were disappearing faster than they could be counted. "Sir," Colonel So-jin reported, "we're receiving surrender offers from 47 Council installations. They want to negotiate." "No negotiations," Ji-hoon replied firmly. The Council had their chance for peace when Ambassador Dae-ho offered it at Nexus Prime. They chose war instead. The hunter had indeed become the hunted. The mighty Galactic Council that had ruled for millennia was crumbling under assault from a species they had dismissed as primitive. And the humans were just getting started. Phase 4 was about to begin. and it would be the final phase. The time for raids and rebellion was over. Now it was time to bring the war directly to the heart of Council power and end their reign of tyranny forever. Admiral Hoonjae stood on the bridge of the Admiral Yi, watching the crystal spires of Nexus Prime grow larger on the main screen. Behind his flagship, a fleet unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen moved through space. These weren't just human ships anymore. Veldari warriors flew alongside human pilots. Former Karathi slaves operated weapon stations next to their liberators. Even rogue Zentari drones, freed from their hive mind slavery, served as scouts for the advancing fleet. "All ships report ready," announced Fleet Admiral Su Young from the tactical station. "The siege weapons are charged and the boarding teams are standing by." The massive space station that housed the Galactic Council had been built to intimidate anyone who approached it. Its crystal walls could withstand the explosion of a star. Its defensive weapons could destroy entire fleets. For 1,000 years, it had been the symbol of Council power over the galaxy. But the humans had been studying it for months, and they had found its weaknesses. Dr. Jae-min, the architect of humanity's technological revolution, activated the special weapons he had designed specifically for this battle. "Resonance frequency weapons are online," he reported. "Target the crystal matrix supporting the main structure." The humans had learned that the beautiful crystal walls of Nexus Prime weren't just for show. They were part of a complex support system that kept the massive station stable. By targeting specific frequencies, they could make the entire structure shake itself apart. The battle began with a sound no one expected: music. Human ships broadcast the same sad piano melody that Jiwoo had played at the first council meeting. But now it was amplified and modified to match the exact frequency that would destabilize the station's crystal matrix. "What is that noise?" demanded Overlord Kethvak from his command center deep inside the station. His red eyes glowed with fury as his perfect fortress began to vibrate around him. Queen Zilandra tried to coordinate the station's defenses, but her isolation from the hive mind had left her confused and uncertain. "Deploy all ships," she ordered, through her mechanical voice. "Destroy them." The Council's defensive fleet was still massive, but it was no longer united. Ships that should have worked together as a team instead fought as separate units, each species following its own tactics and priorities. General Myung-hoon commanded the human siege forces with the precision of a master craftsman. Every attack was calculated to exploit weaknesses that his intelligence teams had identified years earlier. The humans didn't just attack the station's defenses, they attacked the specific components that would cause the maximum cascading failures. "Strike Team Alpha, target the quantum communication hub," he ordered. "Strike Team Beta, focus on the primary power distribution center. Strike Team Gamma, take out the artificial gravity generators on levels 40 through 60. Each target had been chosen for a specific reason. Without quantum communications, the Council couldn't coordinate their defenses. Without power distribution, their weapons would fail. Without artificial gravity, the alien defenders would be helpless in zero-gravity combat that humans had trained for extensively. The station's crystal walls began to crack as the resonance weapons continued their work. Inside, Council members who had once felt untouchable now ran through corridors filled with debris and emergency lighting. Representative Veltash of the Karathi tried to reach his personal ship, but found his way blocked by human soldiers who had somehow infiltrated the most secure levels of the station. The humans moved with confidence through areas they had never seen before, following maps created by years of intelligence gathering. "How do they know our layout better than we do?" Veltash asked his bodyguards, but they had no answer. The truth was that Ambassador In-young's spy network had included maintenance workers, cleaning staff, and low-level technicians on Nexus Prime itself. People who were ignored by the arrogant council members had been feeding information to humanity for years. As the siege continued, it became clear that this wasn't just a military victory. It was a demonstration of everything that made humans different from the council species. Where the aliens fought for dominance and control, humans fought for justice and freedom. Captain Min Jung led boarding parties that included volunteers from dozens of liberated species. When they encountered council forces, they offered surrender rather than death. When they found enslaved workers, they freed them rather than ignoring their plight. "This is how a proper civilization behaves," she told her mixed crew as they secured another section of the station. "We protect those who cannot protect themselves." The final confrontation came in the Great Council chamber, where Ambassador Deho had once been dismissed as primitive. Now he walked through the same doors, but this time he was accompanied by representatives of free species from across the galaxy. Overlord Kethvak and Queen Zilandra waited for him, their bodyguards outnumbered and outgunned by the human soldiers, who filled the chamber. The mighty rulers of the galaxy looked small and afraid in the ruins of their throne room. "You have destroyed everything," Kethvak said, his voice filled with rage and despair. "Thousands of years of order and stability, gone because you couldn't accept your place." Deho looked at the alien who had once seemed so powerful and terrifying. Now he just looked old and tired. "We destroyed nothing but tyranny," Deho replied calmly. "The galaxy will be better without your counsel." Dr. Yunsu, the human philosopher-strategist, stepped forward to deliver the words that would be remembered for generations. "You had every chance to avoid this war. We came to you in peace, offering friendship and cooperation. You chose to respond with violence and conquest." "We are the rightful rulers," Queen Zilandra protested through her mechanical voice. "We brought order to chaos. We united the galaxy." "You brought fear to freedom," Dr. Yunsu replied. "You united the galaxy only in their hatred of your oppression. And in the end, that hatred destroyed you." The formal surrender ceremony was brief. The Galactic Council officially dissolved itself, and power was transferred to a temporary coalition government that included representatives from every free species. But the real victory wasn't military or political. It was moral. Admiral Min Jung, now promoted to head of the Terran peacekeeping force, ensured that former council species were treated as equals in the new galactic government. Even the Draxans and Zentari, who had committed terrible crimes during their rule, were offered rehabilitation rather than revenge. "We are not conquerors," she explained to a gathering of former enemies. "We are liberators. Our goal was never to rule the galaxy ourselves, but to ensure that no one could rule it through fear and force." The restoration of Earth became a symbol of the new galaxy. The Blue World was rebuilt not as humanity's capital, but as a memorial to all species that had suffered under council rule. Representatives from every world contributed to its reconstruction. Years later, elderly Ambassador Deho would stand in a classroom on restored Earth, teaching children from a dozen different species about the most important lesson of the war. Strength does not come from being superior to others, he would tell them, his hair now white with age. True strength comes from understanding others, learning from them, and standing together against injustice. The students, human, Valdari, reformed Karathi, and even young Zentari who had never known the hive mind, listened carefully to his words. They were growing up in a galaxy where cooperation was more valued than conquest, where diversity was seen as strength rather than weakness. "What happened to the old council leaders?" a young human girl asked. Deho smiled sadly. "Overlord Kethvak lives quietly on a farming world, growing food for hungry people. Queen Zilandra works in a research facility, using her intelligence to solve problems instead of creating them. They learned, as their species learned, that there are better ways to live than through fear and domination. The galaxy had learned its lesson about the price of hubris. Those who ignored the signs of intelligence, adaptability, and determination in others did so at their own peril. The Galactic Council had seen humans as primitive and weak, and that blindness had led to their downfall. But humanity's greatest victory wasn't military. It was proving that civilization's future belonged to those who built up rather than tore down, who united rather than divided, who protected the weak rather than exploiting them. In the end, the war that began with humanity being dismissed as insignificant had reshaped the entire galaxy, and the species that had once been considered too primitive for full council membership had shown the universe what true civilization looked like. The age of the Galactic Council was over. The age of the Galactic Federation, built on equality, justice, and mutual respect, had begun. And it all started because some aliens made the mistake of underestimating the species from the small blue world that refused to accept injustice, no matter how powerful those who oppose them seem to be.